All right, welcome for some more affordable fixed blade content. And yes, I know I promised I'd move on to other subjects. But after I did, well, my second video on the cold steel Outdoorsman, the premium San Mai version. And in those videos, I talked about how this was kind of a grail knife for me. I really like the build quality. It is a very pretty knife, and in martial handling, yeah, I really love it. But in utility tasks, especially carving, chopping, batoning, things that you would do outdoors, it fell depressingly short of expectation. In the comments, I got a lot of recommendations to try the much more affordable light version. And I just found a deal on it, so I figured I'd go ahead and pull the trigger. So let's go ahead and take the opportunity to take a close look at this knife on its own merits, and yes, in order to be thorough, compare it side by side to the much more expensive premium version. And spoiler alert, my results were pretty surprising and a little upsetting. Let's go ahead and start by talking about the sheaths. Like some other knives in the Lite series, it's a one-piece polymer construction drilled at the bottom for drainage with an integrated belt clip that is generous enough for standard size belt. Retention hooks on both sides of it, so it's not going anywhere accidentally. Cold Steel calls these Secure sheaths. Does that mean this is a glass-filled material? I don't know, but there is plenty of room front to back that my edge is not rubbing against that material, so I haven't noticed any diminishment that I could attribute to, well, what the sheath is made out of. My biggest issue with it, we'll talk about how a rigid sheath of this length works and doesn't work for me in carry, but my biggest problem is in deployment. And I had to make a change almost immediately. Out of the box, that back edge of the sheath was straight like the front edge, but I needed to take out my micro torch, carefully heat it up, and bend myself out something resembling a thumb ramp. Why? Retention is created by friction with the guard, and this is an example of a sheath that is holding, well, in this case, about half of the grip down inside the sheath. That limits the amount of real estate I have to grab onto, made worse by this rigid pocket clip snug up against the grip. I can't get any fingers in there. Which means when I go to deploy the thing, I am currently defaulting to kind of a weird 2.5 finger pinch thing that is not very secure. I need something to push against at least. I can get my index finger to push against the front feed lip, but yeah, having a bit of a ramp on the back helps me get it out. It's a struggle, and it's coming out in yeah, not a positive grip whatsoever. I may wind up cutting away more of this material to give me more real estate to grab onto. That's a potential to be continued. But okay, let's compare it to the pretty standard Secure sheath that came with the premium version. Now, the upsides of this, I have the entire length of the grip pretty much to get a positive hold on for deployment, and it comes with a nice wide and jimped thumb ramp to press against, and lockup is really crisp and positive. Love it. What I don't love is it's a Secure sheath, and in this case, it's really snug fit front to back. So I cannot help but rub the edge against that glass-filled material. And I think that's why I'm having the ongoing issues with edge retention that are still frustrating me. We'll talk about that in performance. But there is an interesting kind of a bonus. When we talk about specs here in a minute, the premium version front to back is a bit wider than the Lite version. And that means that the Lite version actually fits in the premium sheath, locks up very nicely, and there's plenty of real estate, so I'm not rubbing the edge against the glass-filled material. However, yeah, because it is a bit girthier front to back, it doesn't quite fit in. Yeah, that's not going in there. To talk about the specs and build of the knives themselves, we'll start down at the friendly end. Now, with the premium version, you can obviously see it's got the shiny stainless steel guard and butt cap and a checkered craton grip. I've been told full-length tang. I've never seen one cut apart since it doesn't stick out the front and back of the grips. It's got to be some kind of stick tang. But on the light version, they did cut some costs by making it just a one-piece polymer grip. But like the premium one, it's checkered, and it does have a rubberized coating on it. So in terms of grippiness, they do feel very similar. Now, I certainly get more squishiness out of the Kraton rubber. But as we're going to see in the impact and durability tests, I didn't really feel, well, much difference in terms of shock absorption for comfort, which is interesting. Another thing that's interesting, you can see that the stick tang is full length and does stick out the bottom of the grip about 1 millimeter and change to use as an impact tool. And I have seen one of these cut apart, and it is full-length stick tang, probably about 3/4 of the width of the grip wide. So there's that. That's a nice touch. A lot of these light knives don't have full tangs. This one does. But, okay, when it comes to feel in hand, the premium one feels significantly girthier. Though in terms of specifications, actual measurements, there's not that big a difference. So it might come down to some other things. But both of them have 5-inch, 13 centimeter long grips. And yes, I'm looking down at my notes to give you the metric as well as the imperial. Now, obviously, they taper down away from the blade. There is some palm swell we'll talk about. But the widest point of both at the top, 1.125, 2.9 centimeters. Thickest part in the swell of the grip, okay, the light one is just a little bit slimmer, 3/4 of an inch, 2 centimeters, versus the premium one, which I'm measuring more at 13/16, about 2.1 centimeters, so about 1 millimeter of difference. But I think what I'm feeling in terms of a difference in girth, you might be able to see as I hold them side to side like this. Yeah, it's a difference in the shape of the swell that makes the premium one just chunkier in hand. Before we get into the blades, I've got to lay out the biggest differences between these two knives, starting with, yeah, the price. Shop around, prices do flex, but this one currently on Amazon is going for about $125. Now, I did get a really good deal on this one on Prime Day, but right now when it's not Prime Day, this one is going for less than $25. Actually, I think it's going for like $23 and change US currently. So basically, I can get 5 of these for the price of 1 of these. So is this knife 5 times better than this one? All right, well, let's talk about some other differences, though. Talked about differences in the grip where they cut some costs. But, okay, differences in steel, obviously. This is your Sanmai construction, very crisp lines, very well done. It is hollow ground, though, and as I mentioned in the reviews of this knife, it came with a, well, really bad secondary bevel. I had to really improve that edge profile to get a good cutting edge on it, and I'm still dealing with issues with it dulling on me pretty rapidly, and I think some of that is because of the SecureX sheath. The bone chopping edge on the back has some sharpness to it. We'll look at it in a side-by-side demonstration, but when I tested this, I didn't find it very choppy, but it's actually pretty scrapey, really good for striking a fire steel on. And the jimping on it, well, it's got this kind of staggered jimping here versus, well, okay, well, let's look at this one. You've got, in this case, 4116 Krupp stainless. And it's got kind of a mirror polish on it. Lines are not nearly as well refined. They both have that kind of, well, not American, but still Tanto style blade instead of a hollow ground edge on the premium. This one has a flat saber grind. Now, the edge goes quite a distance up on the blade as compared to this one, which has a lot more flat, but we'll see how they perform in terms of cutting. And yeah, the bone breaking swedge they put on the back here, it's not nearly as sharp, but is it still functional? And yeah, the jimping is just a basic straight across the back of it. The geometry of both lets me get my hand up pretty close to the base of the edge, and yeah, I get my thumbs on the back of them, so that's nice in terms of geometry. But hardness of both steels, they're both floating somewhere above 60 HRC. And we'll see how they do in performance here in a second. But big difference in the weight. Premium version, 8.8 ounces, about 249 grams. Light version, yes, is lighter. 6.5 ounces, about 184 grams. Now, dimensions of, well, the overall lengths of both of them are 11 inches, 28 centimeters. But the blades, a little bit of difference in terms of the dimensions. Now, the lengths of both blades are 6 inches, 15 centimeters. Width, okay, the light one is a little slimmer front to back, as I mentioned. 1 1/16 of an inch, about 2.7 centimeters. This one is about 1 1/8 wide, 2.9 centimeters, so it's about 2 millimeters wider front to back than the light version. It just seems to look slimmer in my head, maybe because of other factors in the geometry. Blade thickness, though, yeah, there's a reduction there. The premium version is closer to 5 millimeters thick at the spine, whereas this is closer to 4, maybe just a shade under 4 millimeters thick. Point of balance, actually the premium version is just about 1/2 inch, maybe 1 centimeter into the grip below the guard, whereas on the light version it's like right at the guard. All right, let me roll in my, well, performance footage, my usual battery of impact, durability, cutting, chopping, batoning, and then we'll talk about how it did. Outdoorsman Lite. Edge towards me. Reverse grip. Edge towards me. Feels good. Straight into the redwood. Edge towards me. It actually feels better. Reverse grip. Edge towards me. Stayed put. No tip damage. Bamboo test. No damage. Now let's cool down out here. It's stick carving time. Yeah, nice. Comfortable in hand. How's that back edge work? It's kind of a blunt scraper. Not bad on the return stroke, though. Got a good edge, good control. Maybe a little bigger than I need for this job, but pretty good. Inch thick ash. Let's see if it'll function as a chopper. Some bite to it. Shut it down, get some whip in that stroke. Okay. Doing something. Back edge do anything? No, not really. Alright, well, that's honestly that's not bad for a light knife. A little batoning. All right, that swedge on the back. It is not really sharp, but it's probably going to chew up the baton. Aim a little bit more for the tip. That was a nice clean cut. Summary of performance results. for less than 25 US dollars. I am beyond impressed with this knife. How does it compare to the premium version? Is the premium version actually worth 5 times this one? Okay, well, starting with, I did put it to a lot of general use for, well, a couple of weeks actually. And that did include food prep. And it is a pretty good slicey knife, but there are certain things about this particular sweep of a blade that I don't find as useful, for me at least, in doing food prep, but it was a pretty darn good food prep tool, very slicey. Speaking of slicey, cutting up a lot of cardboard and packaging, yeah, it's a great slicey tool and very comfortable and secure in hand. Taking it outdoors to some harder tasks, all right, let's get the Marshall ones out of the way. Stabbing and thrusting first into my Pell, which is multiple layers of thick cardboard backed up by a couple of inches of compressed brown paper bag paper up against my redwood target. One thing to be wary about in a Marshall knife is a knife that doesn't have much guard. But like the premium version, it makes up for it in the grippiness and taper of the grip. Penetrating that Pell and then being stabbed directly into the redwood, yeah, penetration was really impressive into the Pell media, and the impact was very comfortable in forward and reverse grip. And yes, I did flip the edge towards me North American Bowie style, but directly into the redwood. Yeah, my hand didn't budge, and there was no uncomfortable kickback, no damage to the tip. So that was incredibly impressive for what I had assumed was just going to be a basic plastic grip. It is much grippier than what I expected it to be. And yes, I did throw the thing. Not necessarily the best balance for throwing, but I did pull it off, and it held up just fine. I don't really think there's much of anything to break here. And I'm not worried about it because, again, I didn't pay very much for it. Speaking of, worrying about damage, I did bamboo tests, hacking and slashing at different angles into a piece of dry bamboo to see if I can induce chip or roll and fragile edge. Yeah, no problem whatsoever. But actual, backyard tasks in my new forest of a backyard. One thing I did with it was some, fine carving, idly making walking sticks out of straight branches that I find to, to help support this old man and his arthritic joints and back and everything. It's a very nice carving tool. I was really impressed with it. It's very comfortable in hand, very responsive, and yeah, good edge retention for those kind of tasks. And then carving and chopping into branches, and yes, batoning through some branches. Its performance was great. But if I really want to do a thorough test, I needed to repeat those tests, at least some of them, side by side with the more expensive premium version. Side by side. Premium. And a light version. Not a lot of difference. Straight into the redwood. Premium. And the light version. Actually, I think I like the light version better. Side by side fine carving. Premium first. All right, same with the light version. It's actually doing a better job. Just getting silly. It's a more stable platform, but Same job with the light version. Wins again with a back edge. Use it to scrape on the premium. Well, it's got some scraping potential. I feel like I have a very good grip on it though. Any chopping potential. Tested this before and was deeply disappointed. Yeah, pretty much just denting the wood. Now, back edge on this one I would not call sharp, but scraping's fine. Coming back this way, no, it's all right. I feel like I got a better grip on it too. Chopping. Yeah, still just kind of smashing into the wood like a blunt chisel. Premium. Surprising lack of bite. Light version. That's a lot better. Premium version. I'll tear up my baton on that sharp edge on the back. Getting stuck. Okay, well, there you go. Light version. Same exact thing. Right there. Yeah, much better. All right, I saved the close-up edge test for after all of the other testing I did, including the side-by-side versus tests, because this is also going to be a side-by-side versus test. Now, absolutely not the out-of-the-box edges. I have not refreshed these edges after all those tests. Let's start with the star of the show. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, nice. All right, premium. It just feels blunter and less toothy. How about cardboard? Light version. I've been cutting up a lot of cardboard with this thing, so I know it's a great cardboard slicer. What about the premium one? Needs a bit more resistance, but yeah, it's still pretty slicey. If you've seen the videos I've already done on this knife, you know I've already put it through my general battery of impact, durability, utility testing. And there were some areas it was just fine, and other areas it really straight up disappointed me. Didn't want to repeat all of the tests, but there were definitely certain tests I really wanted to see how these knives performed against each other. Or I should say more accurately, felt how they performed side by side. And, well, the results were pretty surprising. But in the first test, stabbing and thrusting into my pel, straight into the redwood, they both performed very equally in terms of penetration, channel into the target media. Tips held up just fine being stabbed directly into the wood. The biggest thing I was looking for was difference in grip retention and feel. Impact being translated back into me, especially stabbing directly into wood. And I've got to say, also very equal. I expected that Kraton to be grippier and also be more shock absorbing. And it just really wasn't. They felt very similar. In fact, I would say the slightly slimmer shaping of this grip in my hand made this one feel a little bit better doing that. And that theme, well, continued going forward. Doing some fine carving. Okay, I've certainly mentioned I've struggled to keep a good edge on this knife. Out of the box, it came with a terrible secondary bevel, made it keener. Maybe I just don't know how to sharpen it. But this steel is what I would call very not toothy. So it's good for certain things, but for biting into wood, yeah, it's just, I tend to struggle with it. It did okay. It did fine. But this one performed for me better with less effort, and it was a bit more comfortable in hand doing that fine work. And then taking it to do some deeper carving into branches. Yeah, this one did struggle a bit where this one didn't. This one was very effective. Again, the steel and the edge biting into wood. And then chopping into branches. Okay, I don't think either one of these is designed to be a chopper. And when I initially tested this one, I was pretty disappointed in its lack of choppiness. And yeah, that repeated here. But side by side, this one did a whole lot better biting into those branches. And impact translating back into me, again, felt pretty equal. As in, very comfortable and very secure. Also chopped with those backbone splitting edges. And this one, yeah, as chopping on branches didn't seem to really do much of anything at all. It is really good as a scraping tool. Now this one, nowhere near as sharp or as beefy, but yeah, did about the same. Again, in chopping, mostly nothing against the branches, but effective as a scraping tool, yeah, actually is. Finally, batoning. My initial test with this knife, this was another area where it disappointed me. Don't know how much of it is the edge, the shape of the blade having that, back chopping edge on it that does bite straight back into your baton if you strike on it. Hollow ground geometry that tends to bind up into materials like that and your blade gets stuck. Okay, repeat it again. Chopping through a 3/4 inch branch. Was okay, not great, but side by side, this one blew it away. And again, I can't mention enough, less than $25 knife, $125 knife. All right, quickly down to the unflattering waistline view to talk about carry and deployment. Now, already talked about how I don't have good real estate to grip this thing to deploy it. I really do feel like I need to cut away more of the sheath to be able to get a better grip on the knife. Clipped to my hip though. For walking around it's not bad, but this one, because it is really retained stiffly here, I can't sit down with it. It's in my way, and obviously you can tell sitting down is a thing I like to do, probably a lot more than is healthy for me. So mostly what I've been doing is, well, one, I could stick it in the Secure-X sheath for the other knife, or clipping it to my pocket, or slipping it into my belt or waistband for cone carry style. So I still have options, and again, may be able to improve this. Before we get to martial handling, as always, I have to briefly touch upon what's become the driving philosophy of my knife series, based on the wise words of Jorge Prina, that the best martial knife for you, not only the one you have on you when you need it, I hope you never need it for that, but perhaps the one that you use the most for the most things, and therefore are the most comfortable and familiar with it, the balance between utility and martial usefulness. And this is absolutely an awesome utility tool for many different kinds of tasks. But this also helps with optics. Should you be somewhere with people who, shall we say, are sensitive to you having a weapon on you. And some of those people might be law enforcement. Certainly helpful to be able to justify this as a tool. In comparison to the premium version, I'm going to say that those extra blingy bits do make this potentially look a bit more like a weapon. And maybe that's why I like it so much. Whereas this one, shall we say, is a bit more muted, a bit more tool looking. And finally, if anything should happen to this knife in the wider world, well, $25 versus $125, losing this one is going to hurt my bank account a whole lot less. All right, martially speaking, if you saw the videos I did on this knife, you know I just like this sort of semi-traditional tanto shape. It's something I've been training with for a long time, and yeah, just very familiar, very comfortable. I found it to be very, very useful. Now, between these two blades, the premium one does have advantages in mass for specifically snap cutting, getting some bite out of that kind of action, and I might have just enough to be able to make some use out of striking with the back or the flat. Whereas this knife, yeah, it's just a little too light in hand to feel like I've got anything there. Now, neither knife has a guard or is long enough that I feel like I could do any blocking, parrying, displacing of an opponent's weapon. So my strategies are going to be countercut, counterthrust, evade, use the rest of me. All right, talking about the light one. Just like the premium version, performance in thrusting and stabbing, that includes grip retention, excellent, and that's with the blade in all orientations. Forward, reverse, edge facing away from me, edge facing towards me. I feel like I've got enough belly that I could slash or do some hewing cuts, but I feel like the premium version would have more impact to give me more bite doing those jobs. But this edge has consistently impressed me. Now, I don't have much on the back to, do any kind of back cutting, but I can hook that tip around corners for reverse stabs. So that's there. And turning the edge towards me so I get more cutting action in the stab, yeah, that works really well too. And that tip gives me just a little bit of a bite. I might be able to use a bit of a snap there. What about reverse grip? Well, we have to get there. And yeah, just like the premium version, the balance, the length, the geometry of the grip does encourage me to pursue my bad habit of finger twirling, which I don't recommend because it's not very secure. But one of the reasons I like it so much, not just because I've been doing it so long, it keeps the edge always facing the same way. Edge facing away from me, edge facing away from me, whereas a pinch flip does reverse the direction of the edge briefly until you have the time and maybe the motor coordination to reverse it the other way. But the knife is certainly effective in either blade orientation. Edge facing away from me, very secure grip. Don't even have to put my thumb over the back of it. It's not going anywhere. Get a great hooking stab and some slashing action on the front of the arc in different directions. Blade facing towards me, you get that cutting action in the stabbing arc. But yeah, not a whole lot going on the front stroke. But you can still certainly use it very effectively in either orientation at close quarters. Pommel though, all right, the other one has that cap. I don't know how it's secured on. This one is just the extension of the tang, so I know I have an impact tool to strike with should I need it, and yeah, it's also an impact tool should I need something to strike with, utility-wise. So it has all of that going for it, and again, gotta take into account the difference in the price. Not so worried about something happening to a less than $25 knife as compared to a $125 knife. So yeah, I'm probably going to use this harder and not worry so much about taking it places with me. Anyway, let's go ahead and cut it off here. Get our conversation going in the comments. If you have any questions about either knife, if you happen to have either or both of these, thank you again for your recommendations. I am really, really happy I got this for the price. This knife is phenomenal, and in some ways, yeah, it actually performs better than the more expensive version, which, well, in some ways that makes me really frustrated about that knife, but really, really happy with this one. Anyway, I do have some other affordable Lite series knives to get to. I have certainly promised you more folder content, sword reviews, and yeah, still need to get into tomahawks. I'm trying to work out what my best testing regimen is. Until then, as always, thank you all so much for watching, following my journey, putting up with my madness, liking, subscribing, adding to our conversation, not only in the comments, but on other online forums like Facebook. Never be afraid to seek me out there. And I hope to see you all back for, well, honestly not sure yet.